Well, first, we're going to take you to this developing news on Gaza this morning, with Australia and 24 other countries delivering their strongest message yet that the war in the Strip must end. As politicians converge on the national capital for the first parliamentary sitting week of the year, the government is making headlines here and even around the world. The statement it has signed criticises what Australia calls the inhumane killing of Palestinians and condemns, and I quote, the drip feeding of aid. It also touches on Hamas criticising the treatment of Israeli hostages.
And Israel's been quick to react, calling the statement disconnected from reality. Earlier, we spoke with Australia's Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke.
We've seen too many images of children being killed, of horrific slaughter, of churches being bombed. The images that we've seen have been pretty clear that so much of this is indefensible.
Well, Tony Burke was making those comments on News Breakfast a little earlier, just before he went into a multi-faith church service marking the resumption of Parliament. And our political reporter Tom Lowry is there for us. Good morning, Tom. All the politicians in the church behind you, but they're about to turn their attention to some legislation pretty soon. What's first up on the agenda?
Yeah, good morning, Bridget. Plenty happening here for the first day of the 48th Parliament. But of course, as you mentioned, both the Prime Minister and Opposition Leader are in the church behind me, the Wesley Uniting Church here in Canberra, for what's now sort of a traditional church service to mark the new parliamentary term and parliamentary year every time January and February rolls around. Look, top of the agenda, the government says for this new term is its HECS debt relief bill, which will wipe 20% off student debts. That's something they want to act on as early as this week. It's something we expect the coalition to support as well before they move on to childcare reforms as well, tying childcare funding to safety outcomes in childcare centres. The Prime Minister has set those two things out as really top priorities for the new Parliament. Before we get there, though, there are a few ceremonial duties that will be gone through today. A welcome to country to mark the new parliamentary term, as well as the Chief Justice declaring the new Parliament open, and the Governor-General delivering her speech this afternoon. That is the government speech laying out its agenda for the 3 years ahead. We'll see new MPs sworn in, as well as new senators, and even a few maiden speeches tonight from people like Ailey France, the new member for Dixon, who defeated the opposition leader Peter Dutton at the recent federal election. We'll also get our first look at the new parliamentary chamber, which has so many more Labor MPs in it as a result of that election. It'll really spill over right around the horseshoe shape onto the opposition side of the chamber, and how that dynamic will shift in the chamber as well. Here's the Home Affairs Minister Tony Burke speaking on that a bit earlier.
Obviously, the House of Representatives on the floor will feel different this time, just because the numbers, the nature of it's very different. Every Parliament feels different in that way, but the expectations on us, I've got to say, I don't feel that different.
So really will be just those maiden speeches we'll hear tonight in terms of parliamentary sittings. Our first question time, we'll have to wait until tomorrow to see how that plays out.
Thanks very much, Tom.
Now, South Australia has failed to draw the national disaster declaration that it was hoping for from the federal government over its ongoing toxic algal bloom problem. The Federal Environment Minister, Murray Watt, instead promised $14 million to combat the environmental and economic effects. Marine experts are warning that Australia's seafood industry is at risk of being completely lost, with the toxic algae now affecting local businesses.
Homelessness rates have worsened under the Albanese government's first term in office. Data from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare shows the number of people accessing homelessness services each month has increased by 10% since May 2022. For women and girls, the increase was 14%. Housing Minister Claire O'Neill says she's acutely aware of the problem and has appointed a special envoy for social housing and homelessness.
At least 19 people have died and more than 100 are injured after a Bangladesh Air Force training jet crashed into a crowded college campus in the Bangladeshi capital of Dhaka. Witnesses say Army and fire services rescued trapped students and carried the injured to waiting vehicles. More than 30 people were taken to the National Burn Institute, which quickly ran out of beds, while others were taken to nearby hospitals.
A new pilot program in Western Australia will allow pharmacists to treat everyday health conditions. The graduate certificate will take a minimum of 6 months to complete and gives participants the skills to treat things like skin conditions, ear infections and asthma. The government says the program will make it easier for patients to get a diagnosis and treatment, but peak medical bodies are worried underlying conditions will be overlooked without a visit to a GP.